I am Dr. Kate Ward. I'm a theological ethicist working within the Catholic tradition. I teach undergraduate and graduate students, and I conduct research related to economic ethics and fundamental approaches to ethics. So this is kind of an unusual field. I did grow up Catholic, but I didn't always know that learning about and studying and contributing to the Catholic tradition was something you could do for a career. The way my path went, my first year at college was in 2001, and that was the year the Boston Globe broke the story of clergy sex abuse and its cover-up by Catholic bishops. So like a lot of other Catholics, I faced the question, what does it mean to be part of the church, and is this still something I want for my life? So I decided to learn more about the church's tradition, and I always tell my students now that the thing you're called to might be the thing you find yourself doing to procrastinate from your other work. So I was a psychology major, going to the library and checking out saints' biographies. What I came to believe, and this won't be everyone's path for sure, but for me, I saw that people who care about the church and want it to be a safe place for everyone need to stay within the Catholic community and work for change. And that's really how I've seen my own path. So at first I thought I would work in a parish setting as a lay minister. I went to a Catholic Theological Union to pursue a master's in divinity, the professional degree for ministers. And at the same time, I was working at a labor union, helping to organize workers in Catholic healthcare settings. So this led to me doing outreach to local religious leaders. The Catholic tradition has a really robust history of support for workers' rights, for unionizing. So I got to meet with religious leaders and talk to them about supporting workers, which I really loved. And the more I engaged with the Catholic tradition on economic justice, the more I thought, there's still a lot of work to be done here in terms of applying this tradition to contemporary issues, not just unions, but economic inequality, precarity, and the gig economy, just the whole constellation of what work looks like in the 21st century. So I decided to get a PhD and become a researcher applying the Christian tradition to contemporary economic life. And that's what I do now. So in theology, we study the thoughts and perspectives of people who follow the Christian faith. Those are our authoritative sources, starting with the Bible on down through 2,000 years of thinkers who tried to understand who God is and what that means for them. And ethicists try to say something about how people should live moral lives, making a persuasive statement that will appeal to people that they may want to themselves follow. So I'm a theological ethicist. I look at ethics, how we should live, and my tools in doing that are the texts and perspectives of the Christian tradition. So in theological ethics today, it's very important for us to place those 2,000 years of tradition, which have their own staying power and authority, in dialogue with contemporary experience. But how you define and incorporate that experience can vary. For some, it might be as simple as writing from their own experience, say, as a woman, here's my take on the theological tradition. Or others might use literature or music. So Black theologians like James Cone and Kelly Brown Douglas put the theological tradition in dialogue with the blues tradition. For me, since I'm interested in questions of economic justice, I rely really heavily on social science, economics, and sociology. So for example, I have a book coming out this fall from Georgetown, Wealth, Virtue, and Moral Luck, Christian Ethics in an Age of Inequality. So we all have this intuition that inequality is a moral problem, right? That such a huge gap between the rich and poor, as we see today, there's something immoral about that. Most people feel this way. But the other side of the coin is, how does it affect us as human beings to live in a world with such vast inequality? In the book, I answer that question by looking at how it affects us to have more than we need, which I define as wealthy, or to struggle to survive, which is the experience of poverty. So this sounds like something you need the social sciences to explore, and I do rely a lot on psychology and sociology, but the Christian tradition has a lot to say about this as well. The book explains how living in a world of economic inequality shapes us as moral beings and explains practical strategies we can use to grow in virtue, whether we're struggling or comfortable. The main thing that motivates me to do this research is the fact that we still have poverty in a world with so much wealth. Here's what the Christian tradition would say. Why do we have poverty today? It's not a growth issue. We have enough wealth in the world for everyone to live with basic dignity. And it's not a supply chain or distribution issue because the world is more connected than ever. If we truly wanted people not to be poor and not to have to suffer all the illness, early death, diminished and lost opportunity that comes along with poverty, we could easily stop that from happening. But poverty exists today because not enough people, wealthy people, powerful people, but also just regular people, don't care enough to change it and aren't making it a priority. So, and that's an issue of morals. It's an issue of ethics. And that's an area where my field really has something to say. As an ethicist trying to highlight economic injustice, I'm always going to have plenty of work to do. So that can get a little depressing. But sometimes it's because people know and just don't care, but very often it's that they don't know that poverty can be solved, that it's a moral issue. One strand of the tradition I work with a lot is called Catholic social thought, which is a body of teaching from popes and bishops since the Industrial Revolution. So in the modern period, using Catholic thought to comment on economic life. And there's a joke that's not really a joke that Catholic social thought is the church's best kept secret. Plenty of folks who are fairly serious Catholics don't know that the church has a tradition of thought on workers' rights, economic justice, how government and economy should work together to address problems like poverty and inequality. So I'm always happy when I get the opportunity to speak to groups outside the university, like parish groups, or to write something for a general publication that helps explain the Catholic tradition on economic life to people who want to know about it. Change starts with how we value our fellow human beings, how we value the resources we have and how we use them, and how we see work and its purpose in our life. And theological ethics has a lot to contribute to these conversations. Some work I've been doing recently that has a lot to do with women's lived experience, especially since the pandemic, is a project on the understanding of work in Catholic social thought. Especially since the pandemic, more and more people are realizing that care work is work. Caring for kids or for vulnerable adults, it is work, it takes time, it's extremely difficult to balance that work with a paid job, and at the same time, it's crucially important to our society. In the secular realm, feminist thinkers have been some of the leading voices in pointing this out and calling for social policies that support caregivers. But what's interesting is that Catholic social thought, these statements we have from popes and bishops commenting on economic life, has been making that connection for a long time. The Catholic tradition would say that care work, which may be unpaid and in the family, has just the same value as a paid job. And not just value to the family, but the whole society benefits when children are raised and vulnerable adults are cared for. And the Catholic tradition for a long time has been saying that since society benefits from care work, even that's done in the home, society has a duty to support that work even materially, right? To make sure that those who are providing unpaid care can access their basic livelihood, whether that be through cash grants or something else. So one recent project I completed did a deep dive into the Catholic social thought understanding of work and found that a Catholic perspective on work can support universal basic income. So universal basic income, UBI, is a proposal for societies to guarantee a minimal cash income to every adult, a basic floor. So for example, in the US, a proposal would be $10,000 a year to every adult, no strings attached in cash. And in the US, many people have a very hard time with the idea that someone could survive even at a very basic subsistence level without working a paid job. But I showed that the Catholic tradition supports this because the church recognizes that plenty of people who aren't working for wages are in fact doing vital, crucial work to society, whether it's unpaid care work, community organizing, studying, making art. Those are all forms of work in the Catholic tradition, and they're all valuable. So this is obviously a hugely important issue for women. As we've seen in the pandemic, women often felt they had no choice but to quit paid jobs to provide care because of the fact that it's so difficult because care work is work, right? And it's very difficult to do those two forms of work at the same time. So sociologist Jessica Calarco said, other countries have social safety nets, the US has women. So the Catholic tradition supports social safety nets. Theological ethicists know that. But what my work showed for the first time is that the Catholic tradition can support universal basic income, not just because it's a safety net, but because it conveys the really important truth that lots of forms of work are valuable, even though not all forms of work are paid.